we're coming into a unique period of time. We were in a Goldilocks period beforehand, with capital rates just being, you know, ridiculously low, at least by standards of the last 100 years, right?
Right.
And now that we're in kind of this more traditional period of equity, but still a much higher interest rate environment, has that changed the dynamic for investors in the market, at least for you?
So I think it depends on who you're talking to because I remember buying my first house at 8.5% interest rate. So,
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
I so historically, we're still historically low, but we're higher than what we
Yeah,
used to be. So
yeah,
people are, if you've only been in the market for 10 years, you're getting hit like a brick right now because
yeah,
it's like, you know, the interest rates have doubled in 18 months, right?
yeah.
And so, you're having a hard time digesting this. Then there's the people that have been through a higher interest rate market before this, and you have to adjust. Will you be able to buy as big a buildings? Maybe not. Do you have to maybe take a smaller piece, maybe reduce returns a little bit, for yourself? You just have, you're going to have to think about it a little bit differently. Are you going to be able to go out? Are you going to have to raise more equity than debt? Probably. Um, so there's just different ways that you're going to have to put deals together in order to be able to achieve the same or even, better returns. But, people are going to have to dig in and get creative and, run some numbers. And is it going to be as easy? No, absolutely not. Because, you're going to have to come up with um, just you're going to have to come up with strategies that work in a higher interest rate environment.
So, one of the things that we've seen in other asset classes has been it's the high interest rate environment has affected build outs in particular because folks are looking at how much capital am I deploying, and there's an increased hesitancy towards spending big dollars on build outs. The medical industry and medical office is particularly well known for having expensive build outs.
Mhm.
Can you discuss a little bit about how you typically perceive build outs for an investment, and if there are some strategies to manage and mitigate costs?
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the well, so medical office tenants, they do expect a landlord to contribute. Um,
Yeah.
you know, so let's say, I mean, I think now it's easy to say that typical medical office build out would be like $100 a square foot. The specialty build outs, the tenants, while they obviously would love the landlord to, pay for it, they are um, educated. They're experienced enough to know that, if their build out is $150 a square foot because it's super expensive, they'll get what they can from the landlord, and they understand that they're going to have to fund the rest. And they know in their head how much that it costs to open up a new site for themselves. Um, but let's say the typical average from a shell, is on a good day in my market, and it's probably going to be a little bit different in other markets, especially California, New York, that sort of thing. But let's just use $100 a square foot for easy math. They will expect the landlord to contribute 50 of that, and for that, the landlord can ask for 10 years flat. Yeah, I mean, just 10 years right off the door is the standard. Then they can start to, maybe it's 11 or 12 years that they start, if the tenant wants a little bit more. Then you can start playing with the lease rate. The lease rate is always, as you can't increase it too much because it'll just get, it won't be underwritten that way. And it'll just, so, you can play with it a little bit, but you can't amortize everything. So we all know that game. It is going to just be playing with the numbers. It's going to also be, I think, competitively bidding things. That you'll have to competitively bid because it'll just be some contractors have had some forethought, I know, and stocked up on materials, and some haven't, and some will be able to do it in a different time frame than others. So again, it's going to take a lot of, I think, upfront legwork. I would you have to interview contractors because some of them have been successful through the pandemic and some haven't, and you don't want to get stuck in the middle of a build out and not be able to finish, or you know that's just a mess. So but I think leases will probably go longer than 10 years. But I do think that you need to raise enough capital to be able to be competitive in tenant improvements in order to have a successful medical office building.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, one of the most underrated uh, things that I don't think enough brokers talk about is a well capitalized landlord, and we're certainly entering an environment where that's becoming more important than ever. So
Absolutely.
a change of pace from the get rich quick gurus. Subscribe to the Real Finds podcast for in depth conversations with voices shaping the real estate world.